question really isn't about separating teacher change and student change. It's really focusing on the connection between the two. That's where this backwards planning process becomes critical. The teacher identifying the change in student achievement that they're looking for, or the student outcome that they're seeking. Then identifying what student behaviors are critical in order to get that change. And now I decide on the teacher behaviors that will assist me in getting the student behavior. Anytime a teacher identifies that a change in student behavior is required, knowing that, the next question for the teacher is, what will I do? What will the teacher do what will the teacher do to create the change or the desire to change on the student's part? It's unlikely that one can get a change in student learning behaviors or student attention or focus behaviors without a preceding action that the teacher takes. That's real important in coaching. It doesn't have to be that the teacher's doing anything wrong. The critical part is that what I'm doing, and what I'm doing might be working for 95% of my students, but what I'm doing isn't causing the behavior I need for this particular student. And so I will have to change how I interact or how I respond or how I approach that particular student. So it's always a form of experimentation. If I change this, do I get the desired change I'm looking for in the student? And the coach assists the teacher in exploring what those possible teacher behaviors might be to get the change in student behavior, and then observing the teacher change to see, one, am I really changing? And then two, is my change having an impact on the student? Is it producing that change in the student? When I'm working with an elementary staff, and I want them to focus on identifying desired student outcomes and desired student behaviors, I often encourage them to look ahead. In other words, for elementary people, it means what skills and what capabilities do students need to be successful at the middle school? At the middle school, what do students need to be successful at the high school? At high school, what do students need to be career ready or college ready? Specifically at the elementary level, I find that a lot of what we're looking to identify are student beliefs and student attitudes that support the critical student behaviors of the future. An example, I'm working with a school in Switzerland that switched their language and their focus from students having homework to students having home learning. And the difference being, homework tended to be assigned by the teacher, home learning being choices that a student is making in how to invest extra time and extra energy in order to achieve their desired learning goals. Now, if you think about that at a third and fourth grade level, the student needs a lot of teacher support and teacher coaching to think through that process. What I see happening is preparing a student for an attitude and a discipline that when a student is in high school and beyond, the student understands setting goals and then being able to work backwards from goals to identify needed behaviors. So I think that elementary level, the focus is really on the learning how to learn behaviors. And then I think that builds with the student taking increased responsibility for their learning as the middle school to high school areas occur. I know it's a very common concern to me that I hear is shared back with me from high school teachers that students need to develop that independent learning, that independent decision making about what do I need to do to be successful as they make that move from the middle school into the high school. As I've shared in earlier comments, the choices that teachers make as to teacher strategies, teacher actions, teacher behaviors, those choices are made in order to produce a certain student behavior. So as coaches work with teachers, they should be in the planning process, identifying the student behaviors that the teacher is looking to gain. And then secondly, identifying the connection that the teacher sees between his or her instructional choices with the desired student behavior. Then, as a coach is observing in the teacher's classroom, the coach puts lots of their focus on observing students and identifying which students during the lesson are moving into the desired behavior that the teacher had planned for, which students are not, and then what modification is the teacher making in follow-up lessons, or ideally, what changes might the teacher be making during the lesson as soon as the teacher becomes, that it becomes apparent to the teacher that what I'm doing with this particular student or students is not getting the student behavior that I need in order for the student to reach that achievement. So I think it's critical that coaches are constantly asking the questions of teachers about desired student behaviors and how those connect to the instructional choices the teacher is making, and then constantly observing student behaviors, reporting back to teachers on the desired student behaviors. I'll give you two spots where this is really important. In the elementary grades where teachers are using centers and students are working independently or small groups at centers while the teacher is perhaps working with a small group of students, getting coaches to observe the student behaviors at those centers and allowing the teacher to identify whether or not the design of the center and the procedures that the teacher is using is getting the desired student behaviors at the center. At the secondary level, I see a real critical spot to be looking at this in cooperative group work. So for a teacher to identify with a coach, during this cooperative activity, here's the specific student behaviors that I need to be getting. And then the coach observing, preferably even recording, perhaps with an iPad, the actual conversations happening in those cooperative groups, and then letting the teacher identify what changes I might make to get more of those desired student behaviors I'm seeking.